Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This video today is going to be about the things I finished in January and the kind of main projects that I've been working on in the month of January. And there's some spinning, there's quite a few finished objects, not that many like works in progress to actually share. And I have to say I'm quite impressed because half of them are old projects and half of them are new. So could be worse. And it is, I'm pretty sure, yes, the 3 new projects that I'm going to share are the only things I cast on and didn't then also finish in January. So I think they're actually the only things I started in January, because I'd started a few couple of small things in December, which I shared in my previous video. The only thing that's sort of a bit is the fact that the pressed flowers pullover that I shared in my last video, I actually finished in January, but I included it in the December video because I was like, I did it in Dubai, so it was just easier to include it in that video. But yeah, so I've got 5 finished objects, but they're all smaller. I was very much focused on finishing up some of my more kind of languishing whips, specifically focused on the ones where I felt like I could finish them relatively quickly. And I did manage to finish them all in January, and like I said, only started 3 new ones, which I'm quite happy about. So I should start by saying I'm filming in a different area today, same apartment, just in a different place, just because it's been quite warm. I also have the kind of idea of having to collect everything together that I want to talk about and film in the room I normally film in. I was like, that feels like a lot. It's not a lot, not really, but for me currently is. But gathering everything here is a lot easier because there's a couple of projects that I always work on when I'm sitting here, and the majority of the projects that I have been working on and have finished have either been here or in the living room behind you, technically. And so it just kind of meant that it was a lot easier to gather everything together. My laptop is always here, it's always kind of charging here as well, which makes it easier. So it just made it easier for me to film when I was like, oh, I don't have the energy. So I hope it's not a problem. The lighting should hopefully be okay. I am using artificial lighting because it's already getting kind of late, but I haven't actually changed the time here, so it's actually an hour earlier than what it says. But the clocks are going to change soon, so I'm not going to change it. I do this every year. I change the clocks like maybe once, and then I regret changing it, so then I never do it again. Anyway, but speaking of the clock as well, this is a clock from IKEA that my parents have had, I think, for a number of years, and I think we've only ever had it filled with coffee beans before, if I'm not mistaken. And it's been empty for a long time because we never knew what to put in it, especially with no one really being here full time. It kind of just meant we were worried about putting anything in it, and I've just spur of the moment decided I'm going to put all my yarn scraps in. So they're not all the scraps I currently have, because I produce scraps quite quickly with some of the things that I make, but it's a lot of them, and as you can see it's almost full. So it just needs a little bit more at the top, and then it will be full, and then it will be even more beautiful. And I have easy access to them, but it just kind of means they're out of the way and I can just look at all the pretty things that I've made with that yarn. And yeah. So I'm saving them up once again to give to Hedgehog Fibres for their Tweedy yarn, and then you get a discount. Yes, what am I wearing? I am wearing a project that I have worn. A project? It's not really a project, is it? I'm wearing a jumper / top that I've worn many times on the podcast, and that I've just worn many times in general, because it's just perfect for kind of like my body temperature and everything. This is the crescendo blouse by the Knit Pearl Girl. I did it like half sleeve. At what point is it 3/4? Is it? I'm guessing 3/4 is like here. So this is like a half sleeve or a longer short sleeve. I don't know. But it does mean when it's a bit warmer, but still relatively cool, I find this really comfortable to wear because there's not too much like woolliness on me. I'm not fully enclosed. And I like how it looks. I love the colour. I used Sandnes Garn Sunday and Tin Silk Mohair held together. Talked about it many times before. I'll link the Ravelry page of my project so you can see the numbers if you're interested. But I love this. And I keep saying I need to make another one. And I just never make the time to make another one. But I really do want to. So, finished objects. Let's start with... this is going in no particular order. This is the project, though, I don't think I ever got a chance to share it on the podcast. I'm pretty sure I started it back in November, shortly before I went to Dubai. And I wanted to share it in a video, but I don't think I did. I might have. You might have seen it before. Maybe, I can't remember. But if I had shown it, I didn't have very much of it, and this was one of the first things I tried to finish when I got back. So it's a beanie. The pattern is called the Porty Hat and is by Olga Teague, and just like her Musselburgh hat, you start at the top and do increases, measure your gauge, and then that depending on which size you're making, it tells you how many increases to do, and then you just work until the desired length has been reached. I did mine way longer from memory than what was said in the pattern because I have a pretty big head. I made the adult large, not the biggest size. I think there's an extra large as well. Even with an adult large, like the size is good, but I need the length, otherwise it doesn't fit properly. And it's also a bit longer because I definitely wanted like a little bit of a brim. The yarn I used is Peruvian Highland wool from Filcolana. The colour is either Chinese red or Christmas red or something like that. It's a very red, which is exactly what I wanted because, let me put it on, not a great outfit idea, the red hat with the green top. It's giving very Christmas vibes. But I specifically wanted a 1x1 ribbed hat with a little bit of like a, I don't know, like gnome vibes is what I was sort of going for. Yeah, and this fits exactly how I wanted to. I also have a lot of hair, which I think is part of my problem, but it fits exactly how I wanted it to. Like I said, going for kind of gnome vibes, and also sort of inspired by the Wes Anderson movie, Life Aquatic. I think a lot of people have made red hats because of that movie. And yeah, finally I have my red little beanie. Really fun to knit. The only hard thing with this pattern and the Musselburgh pattern is the fact that you have to make a choice about your needle size, like at the beginning. There's no recommended needle sizes. It's just kind of like use what you think is appropriate for the yarn. So you can obviously look at the ball band and be like, oh, it recommends this. But with a hat, I often find the gauge should be a little bit tighter than what you would normally use the yarn for. And that's always the kind of tricky part. But once you've kind of made a couple of hats, I think you sort of get a feel for like, if this is the like weight of the yarn, I should probably use about this size needle. But that can be a bit tricky. But then it's really easy because you just start and you measure your gauge and that determines it. So the only reason you'd have to unravel it is if you didn't like the fabric that you were getting. So this is washed and blocked and everything and ready to be worn once it gets colder again, because it's been over 10 degrees for more than a week now, I think even longer. It's been a while. It's been inching up, but it should drop down again at some point. But yeah, so really enjoyable. I would love to make way more of these. I just don't need that many hats, and I don't know, is it just my friends, like that the group of friends I have are weird, but most people that I'm friends with that don't knit, even some of the knitters, but specifically people who don't knit, My friends are the sort of people who then don't wear hats. So I can't knit beanies for anyone. And I'm desperate to, because they're fun to make and doesn't use that much yarn, and it's so much quicker than making like socks. And I love making hats. So I don't know why none of my friends seem to wear beanies, even though they live in cold climates. They get cold, but they're like, nah, I just don't wear beanies or hats. So I have no one to make them for. I have obviously thought about, I could make them in a variety of different sizes and then donate them to charity. There's always places looking for beanies and things like that. The only thing is, I think I'd have to think a bit about the timing, so I might start making them now so they're ready for when it gets colder again at the end of the year, because I don't think we're going to need them for much longer, especially with how the weather has been. But yeah, so no one wants my beanies. Any of you want a beanie? Tell me, I'll make you a beanie. Anyway, so that's the Porty Hat. Really fun. I do see more in my future. I do think they're an ideal gift knit if you have the right people in your life for them. I don't have people in my life who want hats. And I should also say I bought 3 skeins of the yarn, so 150 grams. Didn't even touch the third. And I think I have like half of my second skein left. So like I used like 70 to 80 grams of yarn to make the hat, and love it, love it. So that one is done, ready to wear. Then another project that I finally finished. It was already half finished, and I think I shared it half finished. But now it is fully finished. So I made, I think they're called the Festive Mitts by Sandnes. It was a mystery knit along, so I just always have them written down as an M-Cowl. The M-Cowl mitts. But I think they're called Festive Mitts or something like that. And originally I only had the green one done, which I did December 2022, I think. I started and finished it when the knit along was running. And the yarn that I used was from Woollentwine. The green is a mini, 20 gram mini that I had, and the main colour is a undyed Shetland Romney, I think, but the mini is the same. And I made a couple of changes to the pattern. Actually, only one is, I'll take it off so you can see it better. After you've done the thumb increases, you're meant to do a couple of rounds without increasing, and then you split so you have the thumb stitches and you put them on hold. I did a lot more rounds before I actually split those stitches, because of the fact that, although, I don't know, this part of my hand is really long, and otherwise I have it that mittens like rub in here and it's really uncomfortable. So yeah, I made a note of what round I did that on, and then did the same thing for the second one. And I didn't start this one until January this year when I got back from Dubai. I just, for some reason, every time I thought about starting it, I was like, ugh, I don't want to. I loved knitting the first one, but I think it was the Latvian braids that kind of stopped me from wanting to cast on the second one. And I did remember, like, it is a lot of colour work knitting. The charts are really easy to read though. And, you know, it was really fun to do. But I think it was just casting on, doing the Latvian braids was just the thing, it just wasn't working. And yeah, because I only had a 20 gram mini of the green and a 20 gram mini of the red, I decided to make an odd pair. Because I was like, I've done that for socks before, but why not for mittens? And then it's like really festive. And I really like them. I like that this one's like really strong and bold and like Christmas. And this one's a bit more soft and delicate Christmas. But yeah, really nice. I won't be making them again unless I have someone who, you know, really wants them, and then I'd make them as a gift, but I don't need more than one pair of mittens like this. Not that it's cold enough to wear them. And I haven't, that's why I haven't woven in the ends and blocked it, because I can't wear them yet. It's definitely more of like a December, January sort of mitten. And I didn't start them until January, the second one. So can't wear them until the end of this year probably. But who knows, it might get colder again. He's hoping, actually. Then a pair of fingerless mitts that I've never shared on the channel, even though I already had one done, is a secret test knit that I did for Susanne Sommer, because the pattern is called, they're called the Rhona Mitts. It's a pattern that's coming out in 52 weeks of accessories, so it had to be a secret until all the patterns and designers were announced, and that was, I think, mid-January, end of December, something like that. It was relatively recently, and so now I can actually share them. So they're both done. I only actually had one done until I came back in January, and I'd seen like the announcement video and everything, and we got the okay from Susanne Sommer to share pictures and things like that, and I was like, I should finish the second one, because we only needed to do one to give feedback on the pattern. So my brain was like, I'll do the one and then tick, project done, and I'll do the other one eventually. Didn't start until January though. They're relatively quick to knit. It is like Sosu Knits is famous for, 2-color brioche, and you just kind of change up whether you're doing a brioche knit or a brioche purl to kind of get this cool little pattern. And you have a little slit that you make for your thumb, so you just work flat at that point, and then keep working, and then you have an I-cord bind off at the end. Nothing special is done at the beginning, like an I-cord or anything, and that's probably actually the trickiest part. When you start these mittens, you have to do a tubular cast on in 2 colors. It's all explained really well in a lot of detail, and I've read it a few times, and then I was like, okay, I'm not really getting it, let me just try it, and then it made perfect sense. But it is a little bit more intense than a normal tubular cast on because of the 2 colors and because of the kind of extra things you have to do. And then the first few kind of rounds are also a little bit tricky because a tubular cast on like twists on itself. So that wasn't the nicest experience, and I think that was why I didn't want to start the second one. But once you've done that, it's quite simple. You start to get a feel for when you have to change things to get this pattern done. And yeah, I like brioche. I did have trouble with gauge, so I think you're meant to use like a sport weight yarn or a DK or something. I used a fingering weight yarn, so I used Arwetta in a purple colour and a blue colour, because I never like too much contrast with my 2-color brioche. I like it to be very low contrast. And yeah, I had some issues with getting gauge, and then I got stitch gauge, but my row gauge was, I think, quite short. So the mittens should have, I think, been a little bit longer, but it's fine. I'm probably not going to make these again because they weren't the most enjoyable to knit. I'm not sure how much wear I'm going to get out of them, but it was a really cool experience to be part of a test knit for a book, because it is different. The whole process kind of takes a lot longer until you finally get like the finished pattern and things like that. But yeah, it was enjoyable enough, and I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I now have the second one done as well. And then sticking with mitts, though these aren't really mitts, I've been calling these Wristies because I have no idea what else to call them. I've shared these before, but I've now got both of them done. I had one almost completely done last time, and they're literally just like arm warmers. Is that a thing? So I specifically didn't do anything at the top. It's literally just a tube. I did a couple of increases every now and then until I had like the sort of ease that I wanted here. Made them the length that I wanted and everything. It was nothing special. I specifically didn't do any ribbing because I wanted this to curl in both at the bottom and at the top. And I just used some leftover yarn. So this is from Wild Atlantic Yarns. I think it's called like Forest Floor in the Spring, something like that. And I'd made the Nurtured pullover by Andrew and Mary with this yarn. I had like 8 skeins and did not need that many. And then I made a pair of Sunday socks, and then I still had like 1.5 skeins or more left over. And I was like, I want to make something, I don't know what. And then I was like, actually, this could be really nice. I knew the pattern was going to like pull and stripe in odd ways, but I was like, I like that. I think it's funny. And yeah, I just thought could be nice for when it is cool, but not like too cold yet. And yeah, I think it's something I don't have. And I thought it would be a fun way to use some yarn that's quite special. So I finished the scrap that I had, and then I started using yarn from the full skein that I had, and now I have more leftovers, but not like too much. But this yarn just keeps on giving. But yeah, so I haven't blocked it yet or woven in the ends. It was one of the last things I kind of finished in January, I think, because I couldn't find them for a really long time. They kind of just disappeared. It's because it's quite a small-ish project. So with all the things I have on my needles, I couldn't find it. Then the last project is something I had not planned on finishing in January. It was sort of a happy accident because I was working on all of those, and I had a couple of other like things like jumpers and new cast-ons, which I'll share, that I was working on. And so I wanted something a bit where there wasn't like the feeling of you got to get this done, you got to make some progress. I was just enjoying the whole process of knitting it. And that is the Embrace Cowl by Andrew and Mary. So I've shared this, I think, 2 times already on my channel. And it's a cowl that you knit in the round, but as like a long tube. And then you seam it together. And I'm not too happy with the seaming. To be honest, it doesn't look as bad on camera. It's obvious that it's seamed, but it's not because it's like messy or anything. It's just because you can see there's a gap where it's like there should be a purl stitch or purl row in between. But I didn't want to do it too tight because I want there to be a bit of stretch there. Yeah, so that's really the only thing I'm unhappy about. And I'm not sure if I could fix it, because if I pull tighter, then this seam closes up more, but then the whole thing's going to be too tight. So I'm happy enough with it, because this is going to be at the back anyway. Because the fade that I did with just random mini skeins in my stash, I'm not too, like, I like it, but it's not the greatest fade until, in my opinion at least, you get to about this green with brown, and then I think the fade is so beautiful. So this is how I plan to wear it. Like, this will be the front and the dark blue will be at the back, and you can see that it has a twist in it. I wasn't sure if I was going to do that at first, but after I'd blocked it before I seamed it together, I then kind of put it on without the twist, and it would have been too big. So I chose to do the twist, and I think it is nice. And yeah, I used 12 different mini skeins, just random ones from my stash, and tried to make some sort of a fade. And like I said, I'm pretty happy with it, but the blue section at the back could have been better. And as you can imagine, fading through different mini skeins, 12 of them, you have a lot of ends to knit, to sew in at the end, because you fade through all 12, which gets you halfway, and then you fade back through all 12, which gets you to the end. A lot of ends. And I did think, I was like, am I really going to sew them all in? Because you don't have to, because they're all inside this actual like tube. But I'd been knotting them off, and because this is all superwash yarn, the knot does something like pop through to the other side, and I was like, I don't really like that. But I didn't want to weave them all in. So what I did, and I have this on the inside, so you might be able to, maybe, there's certain areas where this slipped stitch doesn't look as neat because that's my beginning and end of round. So that's where all the ends are. And I chose to braid them together. I recorded a bit of it, which I'll include. And it was a bit tricky at times, but it was a slow and nice experience. So I'm really glad I did it, especially means because I didn't have to then sew in all the ends. Yeah, I'll probably do that again. It was, like I said, slow but nice. And yeah, so that's all done and ready for wearing. So all the things I finished are pretty much things that I can't wear currently because it's just too warm. And then the projects that I've been working on. So let's start with old projects. And the first old project is the one I'm so proud of. Because I kind of can't believe that I've actually been working on it. So we're talking about an advent project using an advent from 2021. That's been on my needle for what? More than 2 years now. Oh, poor me. And this is the Fibre Fox advent from 2021, and I decided to make the Poet Shawl by Sari Nordland. I knew it was going to be a big project, and it was going to be a long-term project. Did I think I was going to take this long? No. Should I have expected myself to take this long? Yes. But anyway, I've decided this is getting done this year. Last year I had a couple of kind of what I call focus projects, and I've got that again this year. Older projects that I really would just like to get done at some point this year. And this is number one because it's the only one that's left from last year that I didn't get finished. Didn't even really touch last year. So this is how far I am right now. Now it might still not look like much, but the last time I shared this, which was October or November, I was like down here. I just started with this kind of like creamy yarn with brown speckles. So I was here. I've done all of that. And once I started really like focusing on this and trying to get a couple of rows in every now and then, what ended up happening was, one, I finally understood the pattern repeat. Not completely off by heart, but I have like a little cheat sheet that I use, which isn't going to give you enough information to knit the shawl. But it's a 16 row repeat, and then I kind of just wrote, okay, this is the wrong side. This is what I have to do on the right side. But I just wrote down the keywords that I need to be able to know what kind of a row I need to knit. And then I've just been keeping a tally of which row I'm on, because that was also the tricky part of having to like read my knitting and then figure out, wait, did I just do a row 4 or a row 6 or what? And that was making it really hard. And it's also then helpful to track how many repeats I've done and how many I've left to do. So there is eventually, after this moss stitch, there is a lace chart that you then do. And I have to do 4 more repeats of the 16 rows. And then I can finally start the lace chart, and I can't wait. So I'm currently up to day 10. And last time I showed this, I believe I was on day 4. I think so. So for a month, less than a month really, because I came back in the middle of January. So it's pretty good what you can do when you focus on it. And I'm pretty happy with the fade. All I did was, like, the yarn does a lot of work itself, but you can see it probably best in this area that when I wanted to fade in a new colour, I did 2 rows of it, 2 rows of my original colour, 2 rows of the new colour, and just switched that until I only had about 7 grams left of the first colour that I was fading out. And I'm doing that because to make sure the shawl has all the colours in it and not just like the first, 20, I'm making sure that I'm leaving about 7 to 8 grams at the end because then it means I should have enough that by the time I finished, I should be on day 24. And if not, I don't know, we'll figure it out when we get there. But yeah, really happy with it, really glad I'm finally working on it again, and I'm planning on working on it every month until it's done. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make as much progress every month, especially once I hit the lace chart. It will be interesting to see, is that going to slow me down because it's something different? Or will I enjoy it even more and knit it even quicker because I do like lace knitting? So we'll see. Because I have no idea. I still have quite a few repeats left to do. Then another project that I've shared before, but that's not too old, is a pair of socks that I started last year. And it's the bear paw socks. So they're knitted toe up. It's a pattern by Andrea Mary. I can show you. So cute. Toe up. And you have two different fingering weight yarns that you use. I'm using a skein of just sock yarn from Opal. And then this is from Rico Design. It's like a cashmere sock yarn. And so you hold one colour double, then you hold the second colour double, and then throughout the main body of the sock, you hold one strand of each. And there you get, and it's a 2x2 rib sock. And this is actually the second one that I'm on. It's gonna look weird because it's 2x2 rib and I didn't bring a sock blocker with me. But I have finished the first one. So you just have to, it's not too long, it's just because the ribbing is all scrunched up. But I think last time I shared this, I was like, here? I hadn't done too much because I was only slowly working on it. And once again, it was one of those things, I was like, it's a pair of socks, it's DK worsted weight socks, like they shouldn't take me this long. And so I just quickly kind of churned it out and yeah, did the increase, finished the foot, did the increases, the heel flap. I did make the sock in the leg a little bit shorter than what the pattern said because I don't like my socks to be too long. And I've got fluff everywhere from my spinning wheel. I knit really close to where I have my spinning wheel and where I spin. And so little bits of fluff that come off and are left like at the end are just landing everywhere in my apartment. And land on my knitwear too. But yeah, so first one done. Still needs blocking. But I've started on the second and I'd really, really like to finish these in February. We'll see if that ends up happening. Once I actually knit on them, it doesn't take me too long, but it is kind of committing to knitting these instead of something else. If they're not done this month, because it's already February, then they'll be done in March. Definitely. That's a promise to myself. And then the other old project that I have is a blanket that I've actually been working on. So this is the Battenberg Blanket, which I said last year I wanted to finish. But then I realised I didn't actually have enough like DK and worsted weight scraps to finish it. I would have kind of just used the same colours all the time. And so I'd made my other blanket. So I still did finish a blanket last year, but I also started it last year. And then from that blanket where I used a couple of full skeins, I have now used the leftovers to make squares for this blanket. So this is how far I currently am. I've got almost 4 full rows. I'm just missing a couple of squares here and here and here. And then 4 rows will be done. Though I have been thinking about maybe making it wider. I don't know. Because currently it is more of like a bigger single blanket. And I think I want it bigger. But I might just commit to this first. And then I can always add more later. So I've added a couple of squares to it just randomly where I wanted to. But something else I did this month was I tried to just make more squares. Because I can attach them all I want. But part of the reason I haven't been attaching as many is because I need more different colours. So, in January, I made I think it's 13 and a bit in total. You'll see why in a sec. So these are all leftovers from the stocking that I showed in the last video. So I've got 5 there. That's all Filcolana Peruvian Highland wool. This brown is the same, but I think I did that one when I was back in Austria. Then hand-dyed scraps that I had left from the crochet blanket I'd made. So I finally have different colours. And then this is leftovers from my, well, from the pressed flowers pullover that I made. And I ran out of scraps. But that was only from a skein where I had like a tiny amount left. And I was like, there's no point in me using this tiny amount to start the second sleeve, because I'll just have way more ends to weave in and I have to crack into the other skein anyway. So I managed to get 1 and a bit out. And now the rest of the leftovers I just need to use to finish this up. And for some reason I haven't done that. They're not washed yet, which I like to do beforehand because they're not always the same size. But that is my plan, probably once I finished filming this. So I have 6, 7, 8, 9, okay, 12 and a bit apparently, not 13. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I made a couple of squares in a couple of different colours. I will wash and block them, but I do need to make main coloured squares. So that's my goal for February for this blanket, because I want to finish it this year. This is the year. Last year I thought it was the year. No, this is the year. And yeah, so my plan for February is to try and make a couple of the main coloured squares, and then I can attach more squares again. And I'll probably kind of just cycle through it that way. I like to have that kind of option to just like, and to be able to work on the main coloured squares within a month, and then the next month instead focus on doing the coloured squares. And so it's just, it feels like I'm almost working on a different project. Oh, I'm so great at tricking myself. And yeah, so I do have already blocked a full bag of squares, so I really need main coloured ones and not more of the contrast. But I do need so many main coloured squares that sometimes I just need to change and need to do a coloured square. But yeah, so making some progress on that. I definitely want to try and finish that 4th row. Ideally try and finish a 5th row as well, because if I make a couple, even if I just make like 5 main coloured squares, I should have enough to finish the 4th row and do quite a bit of the 5th row. So we'll see. We'll see. In February's video, once I actually start making more squares. And then 3 new cast-ons from January. First of all, I started a pair of socks. Just looking around because I think I'm missing a project. I'll find it. This was sort of a spontaneous cast on, but I just really wanted to work with this yarn. I started the Anni socks, which are a pair of socks from the Stripes book by Vera Välimäki, I believe her name is. I'm not very far, because like I said, it was a spontaneous cast on, and I just wanted some more toe-up socks. These are fingering weight, so they will just naturally take a bit longer, and as you will have seen from the picture I've hopefully included, they're long socks. So I'll knit one. I think my plan is going to be to go past the heel and then start the second one, and then kind of work on them at the same time, just so I can get as much length out of the 2 skeins that I'm using. Both of the skeins of yarn are from the Fibre Fox. This is some kind of a red. It didn't have a label on it because it was part of like a mystery, like reduced stock sale that I got, so it doesn't have an, it probably did have a name at some point, I don't know it. And then, yes, this looks very small. This is Vesemir, one of the Witcher colorways, also on the Plumpy base. Did I say that? Both of them are Plumpy base, because I love knitting socks with the Plumpy base from the Fibre Fox. And I do have more of the yarn, and I ended up getting this one for free. As you might be able to see, there's lots of like little bits as well. because Georgie said that something went wrong in the dyeing process, and she thinks that like one bit of like the yarn as she was dyeing it, she thinks a bit of it ended up getting burnt, and so it like burnt through a couple of different strands, which is why I have lots of little bits. And she was like, well, I can't sell that. And she was like, I guess maybe I'll use it at some point. And I fell in love with the color and was like, can I buy it off you? And she was like, you can just have it. So I knew it was going to be a bit of a pain winding it up, because there were going to be small bits. It actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, because I got 2 decent sized chunks out, and then some of the other bits are actually decent enough that with the stripes I should be able to get a couple of stripes before I have to join a new bit. So it's kind of nice, because I got this one for free. I got this one reduced because it was a sale item. So they're hand-dyed socks, but they're not going to be that expensive. So I'm going to use the big bits first, and then I'm going to start using the small bits as I start to run out of yarn. Just because I don't want to constantly tie on new ends. But yeah, so that's the Anni socks, and I should say, I guess, they're part of my Make 9. I'm still working on that video. I'm still working on that video because I think I mentioned it last time. January for me is the planning month, and February is the month when I then sort of start to finalize the plans, and then, you know, if I feel they should be released on YouTube or Instagram or both, then I will do it. So that will be coming at some point in February, beginning of March. I've just decided I'm not going to put pressure on myself to do it in January, because I only had like half of January because I wasn't here, and I was like, it's my channel, I'm just going to work at my pace. And, you know, some people don't end up watching the video until later anyway, so. But yeah, so slight spoiler, that is part of a Make 9. And then something I started in Dubai and worked on the flight back to Austria is a baby knit, because I've got a couple of friends who are pregnant and are all expecting babies like in the summertime, and I'm like, I need to get started now, because multiple baby knits for multiple people takes quite a while, even though they're small. And also I like doing baby knits, and so whenever friends of mine are like, oh, I'm pregnant, I'm like, would you like some baby knits? And they're like, oh, are you sure you want to do all that work? And I'm like, please let me do them. So one of the things that I decided to do while I was still in Dubai was to start a Selma's sleep suit. So this is a pattern by Petite Knit, and I know that doesn't the hood look huge? But the thing is, like, I'm at the point now where I need to split the sleeves, and that for me, I'm like, oh, that does actually look kind of tiny, because it is a sleeping suit. So it's not meant to be form-fitting. It's meant to be big and snuggly and cozy, like a sleeping bag for a baby. The yarn that I'm using is, I think it's a baby merino by DMC. It's yarn from my mum's stash. She didn't know what to do with it, and she had plenty of it. I'm using 2 different colors held together. More spinning fluff. So I'm using a white and more of like a beige, because I was like, pure white, never a good idea with babies. And I thought, but with the beige, we'll make it a bit better. And started the hood, and I think like a couple of days before I flew, and then managed to finish the hood and start on the raglan increases on the plane. And then just slowly in January I've been working on finishing the raglan, and now I'm ready to split for the sleeves, and we'll just slowly keep working on it. It's taking a surprisingly long amount of time to finish it, mainly because even though you're knitting it flat and in garter, so you don't have to purl, I think it's like the combination of the Knit Pro needles, the yarn, and working in garter stitch, it's just a bit tedious working on it. So I haven't made a load of progress, but then again, I have plenty of time, especially because the size I'm going to get at the end should be the 6 to 12 month size. I think that's what I went for. But because my gauge is tighter than what it's meant to be, I'm using the numbers for the 1 to 2 years. I can't remember now. But it's I'm using the numbers from a bigger size. I think 2 sizes bigger actually, to get the 6 to 12 month size, because that will be perfect for winter at the end of this year. And so it's designed to be like this little sleeping suit, so that, you know, if you go for like wintry cold walks, it keeps the baby nice and warm. So I'm working on this one slowly but surely. And it's also, you know, it's more than just knitting a jumper. Like the first bit was just the hood, and then you have to do like the body, and then for the legs and the arms, and so it's a lot of work, but it's going to be slow going, but it will get done in time. I know it will. And then the last project that I started in January, also something very spontaneous, but I love a spontaneous cast on. It always happens to me, I think I've said this before, always happens to me late at night, that all of a sudden I get super inspired and I have the greatest idea ever and I need to know if it works out. That's what I had with this. So this is going to be, the pattern is the Maple Scarf by Marie Wallen, but I might be turning it into a cowl instead by just making it shorter. It depends how much length I can get out with the yarn that I have, because I'm using entirely scraps. So this is what I have so far. It's not a whole lot, but it's a lot more than I had, because after I started it, I got to where this yellow is and stopped, because I was like, oh, it looks good. I have confirmed my theory. It works with the scraps that I have. And then I was like, this is what I do. I get these ideas in the middle of the night, I cast on, and then once I realize, cool, works, can confirm, this is going to be great, I stop. Because I'm like, that initial excitement of will it work, is over, because it does work. And then I don't work on it anymore. And so with this project, when I had that and I got to this round here, I think it was like a couple of days later, I saw what I was doing and I was like, Nina, can we please keep working on this? Otherwise this is going to sit around forever. So I then picked it up again and did the rest of it. And I think I've got like 30 rounds already now. And I think I'm almost done with the second motif up here. And yeah, I'm really happy with the colours and things. Like I said, I'm only using scraps. And that will have to determine whether I can make it a full scarf or whether it will just be like a single loop cowl. But yeah, I'm trying to, once again, make more use of my scraps. Part of why I started this and kind of gave myself the permission to start it. And it's been interesting. I've always wanted to do a Marie Wallen pattern. And I was always set on like a jumper or a cardigan, but I'm glad I started with this, because it's been a bit of a lesson with having to change colours way more often than I'm used to with colour work. And you can see all the ends, but I don't have to weave these in, because once again, it's going to just be stuffed inside. So we'll see how much I can get out of all the yarn that I have, and whether I then make the decision to use other scraps and replace a few colours. I'm not sure yet. I'm just going to keep going until I don't have one of the colours anymore, and then I'll make a decision. So that's all my works in progress. And now we're going to briefly talk about some spinning, because I have been spinning since I've been back in Austria, because I cannot get enough. And I do have one spinning project that I don't have with me, because I left it in Dubai because I did it for my mum. So one of the original like braids that my mum and I had bought when she got the spinning wheel that she has in Dubai and we were trying it out, it was a hand-dyed merino bamboo braid by Pixel Atlantis, one of those. I mentioned them last time. It should hopefully all be linked below. But the thing is, I don't think they dye anymore because we got everything, all the braids we bought, we got them really cheap because they were closing their Etsy shop. And so this merino bamboo, I spun it very thin as a singles. It was 100 grams. I then did a 3-ply and was hoping to get a fingering weight, but it ended up going so thin with my singles that I got about 600 meters, or maybe even a bit more, for 100 grams. So it's more of a, when you look at it, it's more of like a light fingering. I didn't get a chance to do the wraps per inch to fully determine it, but it's quite thin. And this very much was the project where I was trying to decide and trying to figure out how thin can I actually spin now that I've been spinning for a little while being a month. And I'm quite proud of it. It's just I said to Mum, I was like, my plan was a fingering weight because I was gonna suggest if she keeps it or if I take it, we weren't sure at the time. I was hoping to be able to then give socks a try because of the bamboo. But now the yarn is so thin, I said to Mum, like, if you want to make socks with it, hold it with a mohair. Gives it extra strength, and it means you pretty much have a fingering weight yarn at the end of it, depending on how tightly you knit it. So yeah, it turned out beautifully. I was really happy with how I spun the singles, and for the most part, the 3-ply I had at the end was relatively well spun, so I did a chain ply again, and yeah, it was one of those projects where I was like, I can definitely see how much I've improved in just a few weeks since I started. And then one project I finished on the day, like I just finished it in time to take it with me, is my mum and I had, can't remember if I mentioned this, I had ordered some fibre from John Arbon Textiles in the UK. I love their yarn. I've always wanted some of their fibre, and we decided to go for it. And I got 200 grams of their Devonia base, which is like blue-faced Exmoor, blue-faced Leicester, and I think like 20% other luster breeds. Something like that. And I got 200 grams, I think it's the Ivy Leaf colorway, and wanted to, so this is what it goes very well with my jumper. So this is what I spun up. I literally plied it the morning before I flew back to Austria. So I washed it and like thwacked it and things in Austria. But I did a 3-ply again. Yes. And so once again, a chain ply. My singles weren't as consistent as with the merino. I was just getting used to this base because it behaved completely differently. Like I remember it feeling in my hands as if it was like oily and slippery and was going to constantly just shoot out of my hands, but it didn't because it's very grippy yarn or fiber. And I tried to aim for about a DK weight, and I did get that. Sometimes it is a bit more of a sport weight than a DK weight, but my plan was to make the grow hat with this by Fibre Tales. So I'm going to knit up a swatch, see if it works out okay, and if I can get gauge and if the fabric looks nice, then I'll cast on that hat, because I really do want to knit with my hand spun now that I've got a bit to be working with. And that's why I also did a 3-ply, because it's got some cables in it, and the rounder the yarn, the better cables kind of pop. And yeah, really happy with it. Like, I think the colour is absolutely gorgeous, and what you can't see from a distance is all the different shades of green that are in there. Oh, absolutely stunning. So I have another 100 grams to spin, but I haven't done it yet because I want to see, will this work out for the grow hat? And then if it does, then I'll probably start spinning the other 100 grams and hopefully be able to get it to a similar consistency. I've never had to do that yet, so we'll see. Then a hand-dyed braid that I bought Yarndale 2021, 2022, 2021 I think it was, is the colorway was called Banana Mint Chocolate, which you might be able to understand because there's some blues and yellows in here and then brown, so banana, mint, and the blue's more of like a minty, bluey green color. And this is 100% superwash merino, and like I said, I've had this in my stash for a while. I bought it at a yarn show at Yarndale, and in my head, I was already using a hand spindle at the time, and I was like, but eventually I'm going to get good enough to use this fiber, because to me it was very special. And the lady who sold it there kind of like talked to me about, you know, if I spin it this way, then I can get this finished product. If I spin it this way, I can get this. And I was just standing there going, I don't know what she's saying to me. I'm just going to nod and agree and be like, oh, that's interesting. It was interesting. I just didn't know enough about spinning to be able to follow along. And so for me, this braid was always like once I can spin, I will spin this. And so I finally decided to tackle it. Finally. I haven't been spinning that long. But I have my own spinning wheel here in Austria now, and I just kind of felt like, yes, I could wait until I'm even better, but you know what? I really want to spin this up. I really want to knit with this, and I'm really glad I did, because I think it's absolutely beautiful. So what I did with this one is I had 100 grams, and like I said, there were these dark browns, these kind of yellow tones, and these minty tones, and then more of a, not a yellow, but more of like a cream. I split it in half, and in one half, which was roughly 50 grams, it wasn't perfect, I put all the minty tones, the yellow tones, and a bit of the cream, and then the dark brown I kept separate, and it had a little bit of the cream in it as well. It wasn't that easy to separate everything perfectly, and I also didn't want it to be perfect. And I spun each one as a singles, going, I didn't spin it too thin because I didn't want this to be a fingering weight, and I was only doing a 2-ply because I want to use this for colour work. And so I didn't want too much stitch definition, which is why I only went for a 2-ply instead of a 3-ply. And really happy with it. So I'd love to use this as a contrast colour for a colourwork jumper. Still need to figure out what yarn I can use with it. But weight-wise, I think this was also about a DK. Yeah, it's also about a DK. And it looks, in some places, it looks a little bit thicker than the Devonia I just shared. And in some places, it's about the same. So about a DK weight. And yeah, I have exactly 100 grams of this, and so happy I've finally been able to spin this up. And then the last thing that I finished in January, sort of finished, is I spun up 100 grams of some Shetland roving, I guess you could say, that I had. And I have 200 grams of this in total. I've only spun up 100 because I'm not sure if I want to spin up the other 100 and then ply it together and make a 2-ply, or if I want to make a 3-ply with this. Depends what I want to make with it. But I did the singles relatively thin. Roughly, see, it's thin. And it depends on what I want to use it for, because obviously a 3-ply is going to make it thicker than if I did a 2-ply. And I think it's an absolutely gorgeous colour. It's undyed. It's a grey sort of Shetland yarn, and it feels amazing. So yeah, I need to decide, do I spin up the other 100 grams now and ply it together with this? Don't know yet. Need to think about, like I said, what I want to make. But I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And I've got more stuff on my spinning wheel already. Like, I finished all of that in January, and then I think it was already end of January, and I started immediately spinning something else, and I was like, that will have to go in the February video, because I don't really want to take stuff off my spinning wheel if I'm not done with it. I do have 2 projects on the go right now that I'm switching between when I need a little bit of break, because one of them's quite a big and long spin. But I was like, nah, let's just leave it with the things that I technically speaking finished, instead of like what I'm working on. But I wanted to share the Shetland because I think it's absolutely stunning. And once I figure out what I'm going to do with it, I can ply it and then use it. But I think I'm going to focus on, like I said, the grow hat first with that green Devonia. And that's it. So as you can see, still absolutely loving my spinning and literally can't get enough of it. And a lot of my knitting time has gone into spinning, but I've still been able to finish quite a few knitted things. To be honest, in some ways I feel like my spinning hasn't really been taking away from my knitting time. It's kind of just given me something to do when I need a break from knitting, to rest like my hands and my joints and things. But it's also, if there's certain things that, I don't know, I want to watch or listen to, something spinning is better. So it's, I don't know, it's been an interesting journey. And I've been really, really happy and glad to have my own spinning wheel. And like I said, there will be a video at some point soon about my spinning journey because I can't get enough talking about it. So that's everything for today. I already have a couple of things lined up for February that I want to talk about because I've been making some good progress on some knits, which is nice. It's only been a couple of days in February. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you in the next video.